going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show, DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle, @DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter, @Bernier_Matt. It's the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show, Preakness Preview Edition. We'll take a look at racing from Pimlico Racecourse coming up on Friday and Saturday afternoon. If you're listening Friday on live, then obviously we're going to have one race that we'll go over here shortly. That's the Black-Eyed Susan. If you check this thing out podcast like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. If you check it out on YouTube, click that subscribe button. You'll get all the latest offerings from DRF TV. Give us those thumbs up as well. Obviously helps get things pushed out there in front and center. Clearly, in the preview, we'll go over a couple of different races. The Preakness, the Black-Eyed Susan, as well as the Dixie. Weather has been sort of the commanding story of this entire week down in Baltimore. We'll touch on that a little bit more momentarily, but I figured I talked about it a little bit in the recap show, saying that I'd touch on it here briefly, and that's how we'll kick things off. Sports betting, we know the big news came earlier on Monday afternoon. That federally, it was ruled unconstitutional, and federally it is now legal. Now it's on a state-by-state basis. There are only a handful of states that have passed any sort of bills and have things in place. New Jersey comes to mind. I believe Connecticut comes to mind. We already know about Delaware. We know some other spots have got some things already cooking and going, and it sounds like in a place like Jersey, it could be as early as Memorial Day weekend. You hear whispers that may or may not be a realistic time frame. Maybe it's going to take another week after that. Whatever the case may be, sports betting is here. And why are we discussing that? Because there is a relation to horse racing. For the longest time, horse racing and the industry in general, we have been the only ones legal as far as this kind of wagering is concerned. We've been the only kids on the block. And now there's about to be a new kid on the block, and a pretty big kid at that, considering you can do really whatever you want. And it's going to be a little bit of the Wild West at first because, again, on a state-by-state basis, whether it's just for a number of things, you can go through and read any of the articles that have been put out by any kind of publication. They're all over the place, and there are podcasts specifically devoted to this. Vegas Sports Information Network has done some very good work over there. You can head on over and check that website out and listen to their stuff as well. But my bigger point, kind of tying it all into this show and this program and everything that we're all about, horse racing, racing has an opportunity here. You saw a lot of people immediately after this thing happened say, oh, racing has the ability to, we got new folks and we can take advantage and blah, 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 blah. I'm not disputing some of those arguments. My bigger point is racing has to get their act together as a whole. If you're going to continue on, for the longest time, you've been the only one. Now you are clearly not the only one, and your entire operating situation is as complicated as it could possibly be. For a newcomer, this is not the easiest game to pick up. I'm not breaking any news there. It's a heck of a lot easier for me to sit there and say, if on a Sunday afternoon you're watching the Giants and the Cowboys, and the Giants are laying 7 points, it's much easier for me to explain to you how that works as opposed to what happens with a trifecta or a superfecta and how you do that and what it costs you. With sports, it's essentially one of two outcomes. I understand there are pushes in there, but you either win or you lose. And sure, it takes a little bit longer for the event to happen, but it's much less complicated. And I think between all of the other issues that we have as an industry in racing, whether it be medication issues, uniformity, stewards, and just crazy rulings and things of that nature, this should be the slap in the face, the wake-up call for all of us, for everyone, to kind of sit back and say, we better get our act together and tighten up ship before this new wave shows up, because, okay, it'll only start off with 3 or 4 or 5, but you better believe that before you know it, it's going to be 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or however many, when they see how much money is being made. I realize you're not going to gain a giant amount of new folks coming into the game, but that's what most of our big entities and organizations have been pumping for quite some time. Let's get new players, new fans. Well, if you're trying to do that, and now all of a sudden the new fans or the newbie to just gambling in general They have that as an alternative. Why would I waste my time trying to figure out this racing thing if I already have a vague idea about who the best player on the New York Yankees is or the best player for the Boston Red Sox or anything like that? If I already have a vague idea about that and I know how the game is played and I know the rules, why would I bother taking time to try to learn something like horse racing and all the little details that could go one way or the other? It feels like, from a uniformity standpoint, everybody put your head together. We shouldn't be saying, it shouldn't be Hatfields and McCoys. It should be everybody realizing that we got to kind of get together. And sure, there's nothing wrong with your business and my business and this business and that business. But at the same time, we are all in the same business. So why not kind of get together and do what's best for the consumer and try to make it as appealing and open and easy to digest for some new fan as possible. You shouldn't have different rules in different jurisdictions. Why is it in one place one thing can go, but in another it can't? Those sort of things don't make a heck of a lot of sense. Whereas you go with any of these other leagues or things that you can bet on, they're pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of change. And guess what? If you play a game in New York and you play a game in California, they use the same rules. With the exception of baseball with the DH. But again, neither here nor there. You get what I'm saying. The idea is, it's very easy. That's easy to digest. You can figure that out in a heartbeat. Racing is not that easy, and you need to put time and effort into just learning. Forget about actually being successful. You need to learn. You need a lot of time. I just think this is an opportunity for racing, not necessarily to immediately look at it and say, well, let's start putting in all sorts of windows at all the tracks. And sure, if you want to do that, I get it. But don't immediately just assume that that's going to be a positive for racing. They may be there to play, make their bets on the different sporting events, and maybe they don't bet on horses because they don't know what the heck's going on. I think this is an opportunity for the industry as a whole to kind of come together. Not saying, open business is fine. You do your thing, we'll do ours. You do it how you want, we'll do it how we want. But the common goal is to get people and keep them and not discourage them and not piss them off, which seems like it happens a lot in horse racing. And it doesn't happen nearly as frequently when you hear about any of these other leagues, about the fans and how they feel jaded or whatever else it may be. This is an opportunity for racing to kind of, I don't want to say get our heads out of the sand, but let's wake up a little bit and be honest with ourselves. This has not been the most fan-friendly game, and it looks beautiful on television, but then again, you get other instances where it looks terrible. We have an opportunity here to tighten up things a little bit and just make it a little bit more easy and a little bit more accommodating for anybody new trying to get into this. Because the minute that thing takes over, and that thing meaning sports betting, the minute it takes over, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to obtain new people for this, as complicated as it is, as easy as that is. And if things keep going this way where the player keeps feeling slighted, even your diehard player that puts tens of thousands of dollars through their window a year, they're eventually going to get fed up. If they keep getting treated like this, and if all of a sudden that's there, that's a nice alternative. It's just I'm hopeful that as a whole, the entire industry, all of us included, hopeful that this is sort of a catalyst to say, hey, let's go. Wake up. Let's get this thing going. Let's right the ship. Let's tighten things up where they need to be tightened up. And let's just get a better product out there that's a little bit easier to digest and a little bit more fan-friendly and a little bit more player-friendly, as opposed to, waiting until this entire wave, because the wave is coming. Until the entire wave takes over, let's try to get the jump on it and not be reactionary. Let's be proactive, not reactive. Anyway, my little spiel. Maybe I was just running around in circles there, but it's just something that I had kind of sitting in the back of my mind. And again, if you agree, disagree, fire away in the comments on Twitter, or shoot a tweet at me on Twitter, on YouTube, or shoot a tweet my way on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Enough of that for right now, though. Let's dive into the big thing that's going on this weekend. Let's start off with the Preakness Stakes. Let's get to some racing, shall we? Let's talk about the 143rd running of the Preakness Stakes, a mile and 3/16, the second leg of the United States Triple Crown. Let's take a look at the field. If you are new to this program, on the far right side of the screen, my odds, a value line, not the morning line odds. Let's go through right in post position order. The number one is Quip going out for Rudy Brisset. You got Florent Giroux aboard, owned by Windstar Farm. same owners, or at least part owners, of Justify. I think Quip is a nice horse. I think he's over his head, 49-1. The number 2, Lone Sailor. Tom Amos has done a very good job with this horse. Wet track, not going to be a problem for him. I think he is the sort of horse that is a prime contender underneath, whether it's in second, third, or fourth. I don't think he can win, but I do think he can come with an honest bid. Thought he ran just fine in Louisville 2 weeks ago. Made him 24-1. The number 3 is Sporting Chance for Wayne Lucas. 1 of 2 in here for the coach. This horse, I have no idea how he's going to run down the lane. If he takes a right-hand turn, it could be a problem for a lot of people. I don't think he's good enough to win here. 99-1. The number 4 is Diamond King, the local hope for John Service. Javier has the mount. 99-1. The number 5, Good Magic. A very strong second-place finish in the Kentucky Derby. I'll admit that I was wrong about him in that spot. Felt like it was just not coming together for Good Magic, and arguably, maybe not on a speed figure standpoint, but I think he ran the best race of his career in Louisville beneath the Twin Spires, and it still wasn't nearly good enough. I think he's going to have a very difficult time turning the tables on Justify on Saturday afternoon. Made him 12-1. The number 6, Tenfold, 49-1 for Steve Asmussen. Might be a decent horse down the road. Think this might be a little bit too much at this point. The number 7 is the big horse, Justify. The winner of the Kentucky Derby. He is an unbeaten 4-for-4. He's over $2 million in career earnings, and he's never earned anything less than a 101 Beyer speed figure. He is strictly the horse to beat. I'm not breaking any news there. I made him 1-5. He's 1-2 on the morning line. I think he comes down from there. Again, I made him 1-5 to win the Preakness, and the number 8 is Bravado, the other one going out for the coach, Wayne Lucas. Luis Saez takes the mountain here. Thought he ran well in the Kentucky Derby, made him 24-1. Let's talk about the pick, and the pick is Justify, your Derby winner. Again, 4-for-4. He's done nothing wrong. That run in the Kentucky Derby, arguably, there's a serious case to be made that it was the best Derby effort in the past 5 to 10 years. It was a brilliant performance considering he was up. Look at the Timeform U.S. pace ratings in there. I believe at the pace call, 169. That's a giant fig, and he's a half length off of it. And he takes over and still goes on with it. The race completely disintegrated with the exception of him and Good Magic. This was a giant effort. Justify, way the horse to beat in here. I'm going to be stunned if he does not win the Preakness. The weather is clearly an issue, but it's not an issue for this horse, and it's not an issue for a number of horses in here. We know that they've handled it. They handled it just 2 weeks ago in Kentucky. So I don't think this horse is going to lose this race. And if he does, it's because of something unforeseen. It's not because he's not good enough or a trip or blah, 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 blah. It would be something that, knock on wood, does not happen. I think he's just way the horse to beat, made him 1-5. He is my pick in here. And as far as the play is concerned, if you're going to play the Preakness, the most overbet combination that you're going to have on Friday or Saturday is going to be the exacta of Justify over Good Magic. That is going to be the underlay of the weekend. I think if you're looking to try to take a shot against one of the two, it has to be with Good Magic. Chad clearly did a very good job, circled the first Saturday in May to have his horse ready to peak, and he did. He peaked. The problem is he still wasn't nearly good enough to beat Justify. I think there's a scenario where he's the one that's going to have to do the work and make the first run at Justify, and I think the wheels could come off at that point. He's clearly the second best horse in this race. And there's a very, very real scenario where they just go 1-2, and it is what it is. They're just better than everyone else. I think there is a scenario where he has to go early if they want to try to win this race. And if he does, perhaps that is his undoing going forward down the lane. 2 horses I'm most interested in using in second and third to try to upset sort of Good Magic anyway would be the number 2 Lone Sailor for the reasons I made mention, and the number 8 Bravado. I thought Bravado ran incredibly well in Kentucky, an effort that may have slipped through the cracks that many people aren't really discussing how good it was. He was very wide, took a little bit of a bump at the beginning. He made a nice little mid-race move, and he flattened out down the lane. When you consider there's a scenario where if you draw a line through the Louisiana Derby, because he was essentially eased with a half mile to go, the Kentucky Derby could have been really his first start since the Risen Star. And he won that race down at the fairgrounds. I think you're going to get a very big move here, second off the layoff. I think he has a little bit of tactical ability. He doesn't have to come from way out of it. He can be a little bit closer, and I think that's going to be important. I think Bravado has a big chance to run second or third in here. So the way that I'm going to approach this, $5 superfecta for the play. I'm going to key Justify in first. I'm going to use the 2 Lone Sailor and the 8 Bravado in second. And then I'm going to use 3 horses in third and fourth. I'm going to use Lone Sailor, Bravado, and I'll include Good Magic. So basically, my entire key to this entire thing for me, if I'm going to try to play this, $5 superfecta, is to have Good Magic run third or fourth, not run second. And really, that's all it comes down to. I think Justify's head and shoulders above everyone else. And I think Good Magic, talent-wise, is clearly the second best horse. But I wonder if the dynamics of this race play against him. I need him to run third or fourth and have Lone Sailor or Bravado run second. So the play for me in the Preakness Stakes on Saturday afternoon, $5 superfecta, 7 with 2-8, with 2-5-8, with 2-5-8. It'll cost you $20. And the pick for me, I think we're going to have a Triple Crown on the line 3 weeks from now at Belmont Park. I think Justify gets the job done in the Preakness. Maybe not a better race quality-wise, but a race that probably presents more outcomes would be the main event on Friday afternoon for the 3-year-old fillies. This is the field for the Black-Eyed Susan, the 94th running of the Black-Eyed Susan, 1 mile and an eighth. It's an important distance for these girls because many of them, for one reason or another, you get to that final eighth of a mile and it's just a stagger fest, and I kind of think that's how this race will play out. In post position order, the number 1, Tell Your Mama, made her 32-1. Midnight Disguise, I may be underestimating her. I made her 9-1. There's a real scenario where she is better than what she's shown. I thought she was good in the Busher, and I thought she was sitting on a big effort in the Gazelle, and she was just really, really poor. Blinkers go on for Linda. If you take the Busher out, though, she's a mid-70s horse, and that doesn't give her any edge on this field. I made her 9-1. We'll find out. Maybe I'll regret that down the road. The number 3, Coach Rocks, made her 6-1, wheeling back in 2 weeks. This is a move not dissimilar to the one that Dale Romans pulled off a few years ago with Black-Eyed Susan winner Go Maggie Go. 6-1 for Coach Rocks. Red Ruby made her 6-1 for Kellen Gorder. A lot of people, a lot of buzz around Red Ruby. Many, many people are gravitating this direction. Perhaps she is good enough to get the job done. Wouldn't stun me if she were to win this race. I can't get past that giant gap in the workout tab from March the 31st to May the 5th. Is she going to come in here and win this race with 2 workouts, a stiff 3/4 work in 1:12 at Keeneland back on May the 12th? Perhaps. I just don't want to find out at what I think is going to be probably right in that 5-1 morning line range, maybe even a little bit shorter than that in the 4-1 number. I made her 6-1. The 5 is Mirab, going out for Graham Motion. I've always been a fan of this horse. I picked her in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. She was god-awful. I thought she ran well in the Suncoast 3 starts back against a speed-friendly racetrack, and she was one of the only ones to make up any sort of ground. We'll find out if she's good enough here. She's painfully slow on paper. I made her 10-1. Number 6 is CS in Charge for another one for Dale Romans. Think you're going to get a forward move out of her, second off the layoff. Figures to be forwardly placed. Made her 24-1. Good one, Honey. Very interested to see what we get out of her. I think she's very talented. She's done nothing wrong in 2 lifetime starts. Thought she was brilliant winning that most recent race, the Weber City Miss. She was out there setting fast fractions. Ears were up. She was loving life, and she finished well. Swapped leads down the lane, but I think she was just bored. When you put 7 on your competition, that's kind of an impressive effort, and she galloped out well. Very modestly bred, but I made her 5-1, and from that 5-1 morning line, I think she's very, very live in here in the Black-Eyed Susan. The 8 is Indy Union for Jeremiah Englehart, a horse that I've always been a fan of, but I have to admit, I feel like she is more of a grinder and a stayer, which perhaps works to her advantage in this race. I think she might be best used underneath, though, rounding out any sort of an exotic wager. Made her 12-1. The 9 is Sarah Street. In many ways, you can make the case that Sarah Street's the horse to beat. Highest last out buyer in the field with a 91, a half length behind My Miss Lily. My Miss Lily didn't run all that well down in Louisville 2 weeks ago, but I don't want to hold that against her. This horse continues to move forward for Kieran McLaughlin. You just look at the 4 races in her career. You've had forward moves in all of them. If you get another forward move, she's probably going to win this race. Made her 5-1. And the number 10 is Stakes on a Plane. This is a horse that's getting Lasix for the first time, but unfortunately on paper, a little bit slow. And you see the pedigree. I kind of think shorter is going to be better. Made her 24-1. That leads us to the pick, and we're going to take a look back at the most recent run for the number 5, Mirab. Again, I've made it clear, I'm a bit of a fan of hers, but as you can take a look here in this race at Laurel most recently, and non-winners one other than, she is loaded in behind horses, and finally when she gets that seam, she explodes. I don't want to say English, Matt. You rarely see a horse put 6.5 lengths on a field in that final eighth of a mile. I love the way that this girl finished, and to me, distance is her friend. So that's kind of why I in a race where I don't think there's a ton of superstars. I think Good One Honey's very good, but at the price, she's probably an underlay. I think Mirab could be the kind of horse that just appreciates the mile and an eighth more than everyone else. The wet track, I don't think is going to be a problem because it looks like it's almost a guarantee of a wet track on Friday afternoon. And I just kind of feel like, you know what? I don't like the short prices. I want a horse that has some staying ability. And visually, I love that last effort from her. I'm going to go with Marab. She's 30-1 on the morning line. I made her 10-1. And my play in this spot is going to be $10 to win in show. Say what you want about show bets. To me, if you've got a big enough price like this girl figures to be, on the show end, she's probably still going to pay $6-7. So kind of one of those instances, if she runs third, I'll get my win bet back and maybe even a few more dollars. And if she somehow gets the job done, obviously she'll pay much more than that. But for me, the 5 Marab, I've always been a fan of hers, and I wonder, maybe this is the opportunity. You sometimes got to think a little bit outside the box. Can't marry yourself just to the figs. Marab, she's slow on paper, but I think the pedigree is there. I like the way that she finished most recently, and I'm not enamored with anybody else in this field. Give me the number 5 Marab to win the Black-Eyed Susan on Friday afternoon. Last race we'll go over on this week's edition of the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition, will be race number 7 on Saturday afternoon, a mile and a 16th on the turf course. This is the field for the Grade 2 Dixie. The Dixie is usually a fun race, and you can go a few different ways. This year, a field of 8, and that's mainly because of the presence of 2 horses, and we'll talk about them on the outside in a little bit. Let's begin in post position order. Number 1 is Fire Away for Shug McGahee. Manny Franco has the mount, made this horse 4-1. Thought the most recent effort was good. From a speed figure standpoint, certainly fits in this bunch with the 102 buyer. I think from a class standpoint, needs to prove that he actually belongs, though, against the big boys. The number 2 is Unbridled One, 32-1 for Jose Corrales. First time for Corrales, first time as a gelding. Well, we'll find out what we get from this horse. I think he's kind of a wild card in here. We have always joked in the office about Unbridled One. Unbridled One a little flighty. Doesn't really want to get the job done. If there's a real fight, he'll find 1 or 2 or 3 better than him. I do wonder, he's only run on turf 1 time, and it was arguably the best race that he's run in a year and a half. That was in the King Eddie back in July last year at Woodbine. And he might be loose on the front, or at least be forwardly placed with a horse like World Approval. I think there's a scenario where Unbridled One, if it's difficult to make up ground over a turf course that has a little bit of cut in it, perhaps Unbridled One can be a big number that sticks around late. Made him 32-1. The 3 is Oh Dionysus, no disrespect, 49-1. The 4 is Frostmourne, a horse that I had higher hopes for coming into a race like the Makers 46 Mile. He got bet heavily, and I don't think he ran all that well. Maybe he's ready to go and take a step forward, third start off the bench, but I think he's going to take some money in here. I made him 5-1. The 5 is Dr. Mounty, the other Shug in this spot. Made this horse 16-1. Think he's going to need to move forward off of a good second place finish in the Henry Clark most recently. The 6 is Just Howard for Graham Motion, a Maryland bred. They decided to test him and send him out west. And usually we have seen that work in the past. East Coast horses going west. They ran him in the Twilight Derby. They ran him in the Hollywood Derby. And both times he got his doors blown off. Those races preceded a long layoff, so perhaps there's something that went amiss. But I have to be honest, far cry and far different sort of race out there against pretty decent horses when you see Motown and Sharp Samurai and Big Score and Channel Maker, as opposed to the horses that he beat in the Commonwealth Derby last year at Laurel. He's going to need to run the best race of his life to even be close. Made him 9-1. The 7 is World Approval. He's a champion. And I have to be honest, this year for him has clearly not gone right, and that's why I've made him 7-2, when on paper he probably should be even money. Made him 7-2 because the Tampa Bay race, some people thought that was a little bit odd that he needed to work as hard as he did. I really can't argue with that, but I thought it was fine considering the distance was probably a little bit far for him, and also it was his first start since the Breeders' Cup. He probably needed one. He came back in the Kilroe Mile, and Mark Casse had laid it out and said the Kilroe would be a stopgap to get to the Grade 1 race at Keeneland. He runs in the Kilroe, and he is god-awful. I don't know what happened, but that horse did not look like the World Approval that we had seen for the first 25 starts of his career. He just never looked like he was going to threaten at any point. He was bet down to 1-2, and you best believe he's going to be bet down again on Saturday. The good news, if you like World Approval, he could be loose on the front end, or at least be very forwardly placed in a race that lacks much speed. You know he handles cut in the ground, as evidenced by that big win up at Saratoga last year in the 4-star Dave over yielding ground. You know he likes the Pimlico turf course. He won this race last year. There's a lot to like and a lot pointing to a horse like World Approval. I can't get past that Kilroe non-effort. And then he doesn't run at Keeneland. And then they call an audible and say, we'll probably wait for the Turf Classic at Churchill. And he doesn't run there. Instead, he shows up here. At a short price, I'm going to try to beat him. I made him 7-2, acknowledging he's the horse to beat. And Divisadero on the far outside. First start for Kelly Rubley. There's no guarantee that this horse can still run. I haven't seen him since October. Prior to that, you hadn't seen him since August. He is really good when he is right, and he has a very big late finish. But I think there's reason to believe that he may be tapering off. And again, I believe he was also pointed to a race like the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs, and for one reason or another, he didn't go there. He ends up here. The two short-priced horses in here are the best horses talent-wise, but I do think they're vulnerable in a spot like this, and that leads me to the horse that I am most interested in trying to take a shot against them with. Let's take a look at the stretch run most recently of a stakes race up at Aqueduct that Fire Away was able to get the job done in.
Open is behind them, then Fire Away, Conquest Panthera, and bolting there into the stretch. Motown makes a move for the lead, but so too Secretariat War. They've gone by a tiring McKagan. Conquest Panthera is down on the inside. Fire Away's trying to close in the center of the course, and here comes Fire Away. And Fire Away takes the lead, and Projected's coming right behind him. Now it's these two, Fire Away and Projected. Fire Away's got it. Fire Away and the Danger's Hour.
That race alone right there, the 102 buyer, I know he popped to his left lead late just at the wire, but I thought it was a good effort. It's hard to ignore that he's won 6 times in his career, and 4 of them have come at Aqueduct. But at the same time, he likes a little bit of cut in the ground. I think he can work out a good trip in here, not be totally outrun. I think he'd be 3, maybe 4 lengths out of it. And I just think he might be the in-form horse right now as opposed to the other 2 horses, World Approval and Divisadero. I'm going to take a shot with the number 1 Fire Away for Shug. It's a kind of an old cliche, but I think there's truth to it. With Shug, as they get older, they continue to get better. I'm going to go with Fire Away. On the play, I will play $20 to win on him at odds of 4-1 or greater. I'd imagine he ends in that 9-2 range because World Approval is going to get bet, Divisadero is going to get bet. But then after that, it kind of feels like Fire Away is really the horse that everyone's going to gravitate towards. So for me, in a race like the Dixie, where I don't trust the 2 favorites in here, give me the number 1 Fire Away for Manny Franco and Shug McGahee. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition, Preakness and Black-Eyed Susan edition. If you've been listening live, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. Thank you for doing so. If you listen podcast, you have YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. As I made mention, if you watch on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us the thumbs up, helps get everything out there in better fashion and out to more eyeballs and hopefully help you construct some better wagers and winning wagers. I shouldn't say better, but maybe offer you a little nugget. And really, that's what any of these videos that we produce are trying to do. We're really not trying to tell you, bet this horse, blah, blah, blah. We're going to tell you what we're probably going to do, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. But perhaps we can give you a little bit of a nugget that maybe you didn't see or maybe you overlooked, and maybe that can help you put together or add to a winning wager. So that's really what we're trying to do with all these DRF TV offerings. And again, you can find those on video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Forum's YouTube channel. Fire away in the comments below if you are on YouTube as well. Always like to hear opinions. If you like somebody in a certain race that maybe I didn't go over or I did go over and give me a reason why, all ears. So again, fire away in the comment section on YouTube. If you want to talk to me on Twitter or you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever else it may be, at Bernier_Matt. It's a little bit late, but for those of you in the Southern California area, if you are trying to go out and play in the event out at Santa Anita on Saturday and Sunday, you have plenty of time. It is the first event in the World Horse Players Tour. By the time this show is airing live on Friday, I will probably be somewhere in the air. I don't know where because I'm flying out there tomorrow afternoon to get out there and help out with the TV portion of everything, but it'll be fun, should be good. You've got Preakness weekend out at Santa Anita. It's going to be a good time. And again, if you are not in the contest just yet, the World Horse Players Tour out at Santa Anita, you have time and contact either Nate Newby or Tom Quigley or fire away on Twitter, I'm sure, at Peter Thomas Fornatal or Jonathan Kinchin. They're the ones that can help you, guide you anyway, to the direction you need to go if you're trying to get in. There's still time. So again, if you're trying to get in or you have a little bit of time, you're going to be in the area and you want to play some races, head on out to Santa Anita and get involved in that contest. I will be back with a recap edition. It won't be on live at noon on Tuesday just because of travel. I'll be flying back on Monday, so it will be uploaded sometime on Tuesday afternoon, the recap edition, Preakness. We'll dive into the Preakness, many of the other graded stakes races, and then also have a little bit of an eye forward, looking at Belmont Park 3 weeks from Saturday, and potentially a Triple Crown on the line for Justify. We'll find out. First things first, got to get through the Preakness. Without further ado, as we always do, we're going to lead into the latest edition of Out of the Gate with all of our usual contributors. Best of luck this Preakness week, and wherever you're playing, whatever you're playing, however you're playing, this has been the Matt Bernier Show.